Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Yesterday, in fact, we showed you the whole interview of the Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on national security and strategic division. Mohit Yusuf, Dr. Mohit Yusuf gave an interview on Wire to Karan Thapar, a known Indian journalist and a broadcaster. And today I was reading in the paper, since last night also we were discussing that the way Mohit Yusuf, Dr. Saab handled this particular issue and the way he answered the questions, they were so to the point, they were so calculated and so appropriate that even the Indian media started bashing Karan Thapar for that. That maybe he let Pakistan come up with their proper stance on various issues, whether we talk about Gilgit-Baltistan or the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or for that matter, you talk about the terrorism and so on and so forth. So primarily today we'll be talking about the 4 points which were mentioned. First one was about that India sent message expressing desire for talks. Now this is stated by Mohit Yusuf Saab. Now this is pretty interesting. Then India is sponsoring terrorism in Pakistan. Number 2 important area. India using Afghan territory against Pakistan. Again, is related to the point number 2. And a world is calling India out over its actions in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So let's hear what Dr. Mohit Yusuf had to say.
I want to be categorical. Kashmir is a national issue for Pakistan. I spend every single day sitting here and thinking about the human being called Kashmiris. And this LOC business, let me clarify once and for all. You can't make the problem the solution. Until I'm here, it's over my dead body. The day India recognizes that only the wishes of the people of Kashmiris matter, this issue can be resolved. And today, Karan, I sit here on the instructions of my Prime Minister to talk to you about the future, to talk to you how we can move forward, how we can get over our problems, not to litigate the past. But
very categorically mentioned that only the wishes of the people of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir matter. Now let's hear another soundbite.
The BNA commander who orchestrated the Chinese consulate attack, third country consulate, mind you, in Karachi, Aslam Achu, was in touch, directly working with his raw handlers, again treated in New Delhi afterwards. The Gavadir Pearl Continental Hotel in Pakistan, the raw handlers in contact as the attack was going on.
Can I stop you there?
In another third country.
Clearly,
As
the Pakistan Prime Minister's effective national security advisor, you will have access to details. And you're giving them to me, and I don't, as a journalist, have the position to be able to question whether this is the truth or a lie.
All right, now that was also very important when Dr. Mohit Yusuf mentioned about the attacks in Pearl Continental Hotel, Gavadir, or you talk about the person who was involved, Akram Achu. He was treated in India as well, and there were proofs with Pakistan. And other than that, when you talk about this very, very tragic incident that took place in Peshawar in APC school, in the Army Public School, in which over 150 young innocent children were massacred by the terrorists. Their handler was in Afghanistan, and the person was from RAW and was in constant touch with the perpetrators. Now this is again something very important. Let's hear it out. Again, another soundbite.
Frankly, India's left us with no choice. Pakistani leaders have constantly tried to find a way forward. This Prime Minister, my Prime Minister, came into office saying what? India takes 1 step, I will take 2 steps. Unfortunately, since that day, India's been running in the opposite direction.
Well, a very straightforward message from the Prime Minister of Pakistan that if India takes 1 step forward, we'll take 2. That is the way to sort of counter issues and look after the problems which are existing. Now, another very important question is that whether the Indians are ready for negotiations. an indication has been given by Dr. Moeed Yusuf that it seems like. To talk about this, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi Saab. He's a senior diplomat. Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab, for your time. And we'll also be talking to Lieutenant General retired Raza Muhammad Khan Saab, who's a senior analyst. General Saab, thank you very much, sir, for your time as well. And soon we'll be joined in by Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, who's an expert on foreign affairs and international relations. Dr. Saab is on his way and he's going to join us any time now. Let me put the first question to you, Ali Sarwar Naqvi Saab, sir. Couple of important areas mentioned in these sound bites. First one was about Kashmir. Let's start off from there, sir. That India primarily is just trying to hold a piece of land, not the people there. They're not responsible for the people, especially now they do not have any authority left. They do not have any special status left for them. Their lands could be bought, their jobs, God knows what's going to happen to them. They are having a lot of insecurity regarding that also, sir. Plus the kind of influence of New Delhi, whether you talk about the area of Ladakh, sir, which has been transformed into a union territory, totally not acceptable by the people there, as well as even the politicians of BJP in Ladakh. Though it's a small area in terms of population, 300,000 people, primarily Muslims, and then you have got Buddhists, and then you have got the Hindus there as well. Now, this was something pretty concerning for them. Second issue was regarding the evidence which Pakistan has and the proof which we have shown earlier as well regarding the attacks, whether you talk about the Chinese consulate in Karachi or Gawada Pearl Continental Hotel, or you talk about the APC and so on and so forth. There's a long list. And the third most important area is that when we say that Indians should realize now that, you know, how to live in the neighborhood. Because currently, if you look at the kind of foreign relationship between India and the neighbors, it's not at all good. So I think worst of its time currently. Your take, Ambassador Saab.
Faisal, you have listed some points.
Wishes of the Kashmiri people. Let's start off from there, sir.
Yeah. Now, much before August 5th, much before the annexation, so-called Indian annexation of the Kashmiri territory, and their revocation of articles in the Indian Constitution, 370 and 35A, much before that, Yashwant Sinha, a former Indian Union Minister and a very important politician, had done a study of Kashmir with some other very prominent Congress leaders and also BJP leaders. And he had concluded in his report that the population of Kashmir is totally alienated, and that under no circumstances will the Kashmiri people want to continue to live with India, that they are now lost to India. So when you talked about territory and people, I mean, territory aside, the people of Kashmir are completely alienated from India. And this has been borne out by many other reports, studies, assessments, analysis of all kinds. So the Indian government is faced with the situation to deal with complete alienation. However, what they are doing is even try to meddle with that, and how they want to change, make demographic changes. They want to settle people under the domicile law. They want to bring people from outside and give them the right to acquire property and to settle down. So they want to engineer the social fabric of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. This is, I think, a measure that will further alienate the people of Kashmir. And much before such a demographic change occurs, there will be some give in that situation. And that give is what now we are witnessing. We are witnessing today Indian frustration in Ladakh and Indian inability to cow down Pakistan, and therefore in desperation, they are fluttering their arms in the air, flailing wildly here and there, and they don't seem to have any solution in sight. And there comes the interview of Dr. Moeed Yusuf. I think Dr. Moeed Yusuf has made it very clear, as you yourself showed in your clips, that the principal concern for Pakistan is the people of Kashmir.
Exactly, the wish of the people of
The
Kashmir,
wish.
that is the key, correct?
Their rights, we have always defended, advocated, tried to enforce acceptance of those rights, and there is no way that Pakistan will change from that position. In fact, Pakistan has now developed a consistency in such matters. We were the supporters of decolonization in North Africa. We were the supporters of the removal of the apartheid regime in South Africa. We were then, involved with many other freedom movements, and lately, coming forward to the present position, we have supported again in unequivocal terms the rights of the Palestinian people. So it is all in line. Our principal concern is Kashmir, but all over the world we have taken the same position
Regarding human rights and all.
regarding human
All
rights.
right. All right. Now, Dr. Saab, a couple of points earlier mentioned. There were concerns. I was reading an article yesterday about the concern of the people in Kashmir and Ladakh. Primarily, Dr. Saab, they are concerned about their jobs. Primarily, that leads to their livelihood. They are talking about the security of their lands also, because now, after the abrogation of 35A in particular, lands could be bought. Anybody could come and invest. Primarily, they are threatened that most likely a lot of industry is going to be set up there on their lands. A lot of army most likely is going to come and take over lands and develop their own colonies or cantonments, as they say. There's a threat to their culture, and then there is a threat to the environment also. Your take, sir.
I think that if we can focus on the Kashmir's current situation, and after the 370 and 330 and 35A revoke, systematically Indian government has started changing the demographic setting of the Indian occupied Kashmir. They are afraid, that's why they have, you can say, started issuing the new domicile. They wanted to, you can say, change the population setting there. They are afraid that the Kashmiris are not with them. That's simple. If the Kashmiris are with them, and if they think that the majority of the Kashmiris are with them, and the way this since many decades they have been claiming that the elections in the Kashmir, regular elections in Kashmir, that is a, what you call it, plebiscite indirectly. It confirms the Indian, you can say, unity or something like that. But then why they need to change the demographic setting of the Kashmiris? So this is the first point. So you cannot leave that side. You cannot leave it aside. This is first point. Second, of course, if you see in the case of Indian occupied Kashmir, it's a disputed territory. And it's a violation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions. And the third, I agree with you. Whatever they do, if they place the industry, definitely they say that we are developing the Kashmir. We are bringing the economic stability in that. We are providing them more jobs. But with all these kind of the things,
They'll be bringing in people from the other parts of India.
definitely, the investor will be the outsider, labor will be the outsider, scenic is area, it will be something different. Of course, the socio-economic activity in that area will bring a change, what we call it, economic change, but at the same time, it will bringing a societal transformation. It will be creating more resentment among the Kashmiris. It is it's a violation of the, what we call it, United Nations. That is my.
Okay. Now, also, Dr. Saab, we have been joined in by General Raza Khan Saab. General Saab, now a couple of points for you, sir. I'm sure you must have heard what Mohd Yusuf Saab had to say yesterday. He was very focused, to the point. It was a very lengthy interview. Today, the Indian media went after Karan Thapar, that Karan Thapar let the Pakistani National Security Advisor talk a little too much, and the Pakistani SAPM was able to I would say in a very, very decent way, he was able to throw light on all the existing issues. Whether you talk about the Indian involvement in terrorism in Afghanistan and using the Afghan soil against Pakistan, whether you talk about the miseries carried out by the Indian brutal forces in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or you talk about the change of the region, Ladakh, converting into a Union territory totally opposed by the Chinese, or so and so forth. I mean, there's a long list. And then giving them proof that the terrorists were treated in New Delhi, and again also telling them that it seems that now the Indians are somewhat ready for talks. I mean, after this, let me put the last question first so that you may answer. Do you think that there seems to be a desire within the ranks of India to sort of, engage Pakistan in some sort of a dialogue process and see what exactly are we thinking? General Saab.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I think I would agree with you that our NSA was very articulate, logical, and he communicated, I think, Pakistan's view with great clarity. And of course, Mr. Karan Thapar, I don't know, I found him to be very abrasive, a bit impatient, and also he was interrupting the NSA very frequently. But despite that, I think we were able to put our point across. Now, the question that comes to mind is that if we have evidence, as surely we have, then what are we going to do with that evidence? What are we expecting, to happen in the environments which now prevails because of all what India has done against Pakistan? Is it conducive for talks between the two countries? Should we be asking India to come and talk to us? Is it not in Indians' own interest that they initiate a dialogue with Pakistan, because they find themselves that the position in which they are, it is totally untenable by them. So the people of Pakistan, what can they expect? Probably they may expect that the government of India would carry out the trial of all those government officials, raw officials, who ordered the killings of innocent Pakistanis, including the APS children and other terrorist activities. But that is not likely to happen. Even if those cases go to the Indian courts, we know what the Indian courts will do under the BJP government. And what option does Pakistan have as part of our national security strategy? Can we respond in kind through air or missile raids, as Mr. Modi did, at the epicenters or the nerve centers or from where these terrorist activities emanated, whether they were in Afghanistan or in India? I don't know. I mean, this could be part of a debate and discussion of our response. Then our response to the hybrid war, which India has waging constantly against us, I think that was missed out, and I think we need to seriously consider what should be our national security strategy to that, whether we should continue, to respond defensively to that, which seems to be our present policy, or whether, the government is going to increase the national security and the defense budget to respond to defend ourselves offensively during the hybrid war. Also, an issue to consider is that if it is untenable, if it was untenable for NATO and ISAF to fail, to continue their occupation of Afghanistan for 19 years, having spent $1 trillion, then can India do it if the people of Kashmir are unwilling, to live with India? And will India not collapse under the weight of its own defense spending on Kashmir and in Ladakh and in other areas? And if that be so, then should Pakistan be, wishing to ask India to come on a negotiation table with them? Also, because we clearly know what India is likely to talk with Pakistan. They have clearly said that if we sit and talk with you, we are going to talk with you about the Baltistan, and Indian occupied Kashmir is off the talks. So I think this is an issue which will need a lot of clarifications before the start of any dialogue. But I think this is a good start, and I hope one day you or anyone else could interview Mr. Ajit Doval and ask him about the reasons of the failure of the Doval Doctrine and what it has done, to India and to peace in the subcontinent and peace in Asia.
Now, Ambassador Saab, whenever I think of Ajit Doval, I mean, the first thing which comes in my mind is about the offensive defense. Now, if you literally look into the meaning of offensive defense, that's terrorism in one way or the other. Now, it is just totally up to your thinking and upon your assumption that, well, this XYZ is the enemy, and that enemy could be a potential threat, and that potential threat could be very dangerous for me, so eliminate that.
Yeah.
I mean, I fail to understand this. I mean, if the security advisor or the national security advisor of a nuclear state, which is the second largest population in the world, which is trigger happy primarily, sir, because when you look at the Indian military or the other paramilitary forces, I mean, whether you talk about the pellet guns or otherwise, I mean, if they claim that they're their own people, then they are killing their own people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, sir. Let's talk about
Yeah.
the Doval Doctrine
The Doval
primarily.
Doctrine, yeah. You see, interestingly, Faisal, we, you and I and all the others are witness to the whole thing coming full circle. There, in the beginning of this century, in the early 2000s, the onus was being put on Pakistan for terrorism, for sponsoring terrorist groups, for at least supporting and abetting with terrorism. And now, 20 years later, we are coming round to a point, because of the Doval Doctrine of offensive defense, we have come to a point where India is being told that they have been found involved in terrorist acts of heinous terrorist activities and crimes, as the special assistant pointed out, the APS school incident, the PC in Gwadar, the attack on the Chinese consulate in Karachi, and so many other such incidents. And then the biggest thing that of all this is that we have got an active Indian spy
Yep.
of RAW in our in our custody now, and found involved in all kinds of terrorist sponsoring activities. So, India cannot get away with this. The time has now come where they are going to be put into the dock as to why they are doing this. Are they behaving like a responsible neighbor? Are they observing the international human rights principles? And above all, are they aiming to do something that they have done already in 1971? Bangladesh, I have high respect for that country and its sovereignty, but that whole thing would not have happened if India was not involved. So, are they playing those same old games which are now completely debunked and declared bankrupt ideas, but offensive defense is what governs their thinking even today.
Another important point, sir, that is about the set 5 preconditions for the renegotiations to take place, sir, regarding Kashmir. I mean, Moeed Yusuf Saab mentioned that there should be a withdrawal of the military. People should be at least given some sort of relaxation so that they can live. I mean, those who need the medical treatment should be able to go to the hospitals. I mean, there's a huge shortage of so many things: medical facilities, food, clean drinking water, so on and so forth. And then they have picked up almost at least one person from every house, sir, wherever there is Muslim majority. So there's a different ball game altogether. Do you think, sir, there is a probability that in the coming days or months there could be, I will not use the word meaningful dialogue because I fail to understand the word meaningful, because it has a different meaning for one party, it has a different meaning for the other, but sir, at least to sit and talk, to initiate a process?
I think that if you ask me, my understanding is that between or among the nuclear weapon states, there must be continuity of the dialogue process. Channels of communication must not be closed. Because otherwise there is a probability of miscalculation.
Correct?
And we cannot afford. We have learned in the nuclear history since 1962 that nuclear armed states remain in contact. This is first point. Second is, when you talk about the dialogue process, Pakistan has tried the dialogue process like composite dialogue or different issues, but India always scuttle everything. Now, where the dialogue ended, India ended the dialogue process, we did not. Now, if India want to start, India has a dialogue process between the two strategic rivals. It start, you can say, without any conditions. Or if you are putting the condition, what is starting from the Moody's 2014? That's why meaningful dialogue, which I think I'm not looking in the near future, because Modi from the very beginning said the Pakistanis have to talk with us or with the Kashmiris. Or Moeed has said very correctly,
Three
three
parties.
parties. This is important. They are not ready to discuss with you or Kashmir. We are not ready to discuss with them anything else, because this is the only problem at the moment. And why the Indians have contacted us for a dialogue? They wanted to pacify the situation, give this impression. Indians have a habit, or this Modi government since last 6 years. I mean that if you see, he takes one step forward, 2 steps backward.
Yeah.
Starting from
Especially in our case, yeah.
No, practically. Starting from UFA, starting from this, what he landed in the Lahore and what he did it, and what is happening now. So by this way, they try to create an atmosphere that we are in contact with Pakistan, we are in dialogue in Pakistan, and then look, Pakistan has once again started a, you can say, movement. So they wanted to create this impression in the world by engaging Pakistan in the dialogue process, that today that Kashmiri's issue is a lesser significant. So I think starting a dialogue, minding the Kashmir or Kashmiri's current situation is a useless dialogue. On the other side, yes, as I'm pointing out, the nuclear weapons or nuclear armed states cannot afford deadlock. So we have to maintain some kind of a balance there. Second point in this context is that I think that Indian or especially BJP government has been now facing some kind of a challenges. Domestic challenges, which have been started with 370 article revoking. They are what we call it Civilian Act. Everywhere there are demonstrations. And I think earlier Ambassador Sahab very rightly pointed out, what is the interview of this famous politician, Farooq Abdullah, I think, that when he said, Kashmiris will love or can live under the rule of the Chinese,
Yes.
not what you call it, Indians.
Farooq Abdullah said that.
because he wanted to distance from Pakistan.
Yeah,
because
most
his
likely.
entire life he was criticizing us. So at this stage he can't. But when he said they are
But what he
ready
meant was Pakistan, actually.
anywhere, anywhere.
Yeah.
So he was creating his signifies a political, but this is a revealing statement by a
Coming from the former chief.
former
minister.
chief, former leading figure among the pro-Indian Kashmiris. I can say he was the figure. So in that context, if that is, he is saying this, how we can ignore? So this is first point. Second is, Indian economy, it is facing a problem. Without starting a dialogue, tension remains on the India-Pakistan border. It's taxing us equally. But India's economy is very much dependent on the foreign direct investment, and now they have a conflict on a longer LAC as well. So I think the investors are mad. Military industrial complex will be happy. Some kind of the investment can come from the world, but the common investor, whom you are saying that who can bring a activity on the basis of that investment, for which we used to say shining India.
India on a rise, India on a move.
India's shining move or shining India is now it is debatable even within the India. Third important point is, agreed, today Hindutva forces are on the, you can say, rise. They are sustaining their popularity, but sooner the leftists within the India, the other nationalists in the India, the other political forces in the India, they are questioning.
They have started
because of
raising
these
the
two
concern, yes.
because of these two conflicts, Modi government has compromised on the India's strategic autonomy. In the last 7 decades, which the Indians, whether good or bad time, they preserved very carefully. They have now compromised. Second, in the last, let's say, 2 decades or 2.5 decades, they were experiencing the economic rise. Now it's declined. Third, they were thinking that India has as a regional power, it has a good relation with all the neighbors. Today, his policies brought, with us conflict is normal. What is with the Bangladesh? What is its relations today with the Nepal? Their map. What is with the China? Now, that's what is with the Sri Lanka. So India's border, on which India developed in the previous years, after, especially in the post-Cold War, some kind of a working, dominating, IK Gujral Doctrine, minusing Pakistan, practically Indra doctrines working except Pakistan in the South Asia. Today, everything has been challenged. And sooner or later, within the India, there is a very strong strategic community which is disagreeing with the Modi's policy. There is a very strong political voice which is disagreeing. I've read yesterday, I think it was a caption from the Indian newspaper in Pakistan, in this Express. I have to double check it because I don't know this PTA, what we call it, when we try to open the Indian newspapers, they are also blocked in Pakistan. I don't understand why this is happening in many servers. There is a statement, very revealing statement by Rahul Gandhi. He said, Indian Muslims and Dalits are not treated by the Hindus or Hindutva as a human beings. This is a
Just imagine.
revealing statement.
As if
So-
they are lesser than humans.
Yeah, lesser. So if the Congress leader is saying this, maybe
It carries a
today-
lot of value.
That is a different.
yeah.
So within the India, we have to wait and see. Things are different. Maybe they are on a certain
But maybe
trajectory.
the normal Indians, I mean, the majority, they have realized that whatever is happening in India, it's leading India somewhere, deep inside the Indian Ocean, actually, because that is what is happening. So let me also engage Jalal Saab. Jalal Saab, now,
I can give you one point here.
please go ahead.
As you said, Indians are talking about net security provided in the Indian Ocean. They are talking about net security provided in the region. Which kind of security they are providing to the region? Their neighborhood is insecure because of them.
Well, we'll see, and then we'll also be talking about the Quad.
Yeah.
Where is that heading? Now, Jalal Saab, since we were talking about the 5 points, which the SAPM gave regarding the resumption of the talks. He said Kashmiri leadership, which is under either house arrest or is in jail, like people like Yasin Malik and Gilani Saab and so on and so forth, they should be freed. Military should be back into the barracks. Abrogation of 370 should be taken back and it should be reversed. Terrorism in Pakistan should be stopped, and human rights violations all over India, and especially in Kashmir, should also come to an end. Now, this is an ideal, situation, but sir, when you look at the Indian leadership, they're exactly working on the opposite lines. So there seems to be an absolute disconnect here, sir. They would never do that. Why should they follow these 5 principles in order to bring in peace there, sir? General Saab?
Yes, I think it was also said that it doesn't matter much to Pakistan whether Article 370 and 35A are reversed or not, because we do not recognize these articles, and whatever India has done is illegal. So I think that has been our position, and our position has also been that we staunchly believe in the resolution of the Kashmir dispute through the wishes of the Kashmiri people and the United Nations Security Council resolutions. So I think what was meant was to communicate this point. The terrorist activities against Pakistan, yes, of course, that should be a leading condition, for any dialogue between India and Pakistan. And the human rights violations of the Kashmiris and also other minorities in India, I think there is some pressure on India, some international pressure on India through the UN, the EU, and the US and other countries also, but I think that is not enough. And the OIC, including Pakistan, needs to continuously apply pressure on India. And unless, these violations, grave violations, are stopped, I think the environment for any dialogue between India and Pakistan will not be conducive. Also, I'd like to add here that I think what was also missed out was that China is now effectively, one of the members to the dispute in Kashmir. It's a nuclear power, and because what India has done in Ladakh, so China is very much involved. And if India is trying to solve a political problem through military means, I think it will never succeed.
Now, General Saab, another point. That is, again, when we hear the SAPM saying that our Prime Minister has given a very clear-cut, in fact, insight, and he says that if the Indians would take 1 step forward, we will take 2. And this is what he exactly meant. Pakistan really wants peace in the region. So we want peace in Afghanistan and we want peace in Kashmir so that the entire region grows. As the modern economics or the modern international relations, they also believe in one thing, that regions grow together, individual countries can't grow. So keeping that in mind, sir, do you think this advice for the Indians by our Prime Minister would be acceptable at any level or no?
I think it will be very difficult to say anything on this because as long as the BJP government remains in power, and which is actually based on hatred of Indian Muslims and hatred of Pakistan, because it leads to them in the elections. So I don't see they reversing their course very easily. We'll see that what is happening now in Bihar, and they were again started blaming India, China as well as Pakistan. In fact, both of them. Their foreign minister is on record having saying that Pakistan is creating problems for India, which is totally false. So one is not very hopeful. But if, as was mentioned previously, if their economic situation, I think, is going down, that along with international pressures on human rights violations may compel them, to sit on a negotiation table with Pakistan and whether those negotiations will be meaningful or not, one cannot be sure, knowing the stated Indian position on the issue, which is very, very obstinate and very, very illogical.
All right, Jal Saab. Now, quick comments are on two issues. Yesterday, I was going through a story, Dr. Saab and Ambassador, and that was about a person from Jharkhand who was a Christian, 83-year-old, who was picked up by the Indian law enforcement agencies, and he was a priest, if I'm not wrong. He was picked up on the charges of terrorism or supporting terrorism, because for some reason they thought that this poor man, old man who is not even well, is linked with the Maoist rebels. And he was picked up and sent to Mumbai for further interrogation and investigation purposes. Now, this is the mindset of the Indians, sir.
Yeah.
And over here, when we have a whole list, dossiers after dossier, regarding Kulbhushan Yadav's involvement,
Yeah.
and again, even yesterday, Mohit Yusuf mentioned that $1 million were given to
Yeah.
TTP,
10 million.
Yeah.
10 million, sorry. I've just imagine you talking about this kind of money being distributed, and
Yeah.
what's going on there now?
Yeah, you see, this is obviously a blatant attempt at completely denying the truth and taking a stance which is absolutely untenable. Now, I must, before I go on, it struck me that we must congratulate ourselves and the audience who are listening in on Pakistan's success in the UN Human Rights Council.
Yeah.
I mean, this gives us a place, a peg to hang our case for human rights observance.
In a more
in
effective
Kashmir.
way.
Now, you see, the Indians are now sort of running after people, running after groups, individuals, and all kinds of flimsy pretexts, and they are making themselves a laughing stock, because any government which behaves in this fashion, Lukashenko in Ukraine is now wanting to have talks with the opposition.
Ladies.
Ladies, and he may have to leave. So you can't impose this kind of repression and get away
And
with
see, he's been in power for such a long time, totally supported by the other powers.
Yeah, exactly.
From the east.
Yeah.
From the east. Dr. Saab, closing remarks from you, sir.
My understanding is that India is going through a big transformation. We have to keep an eye on it. And the internal situation for the government, or crises for the government, are such as that the Indian ruling elite, I can use word, including their military and their other establishment, they tried to identify an external enemy to divert the attention. Modi won the election 2019 on Chowkidar, Pakistan, and they will continue maintaining this hatred against Pakistan within the Indian society. And their media, which is very much, you can say, beneficiary of the Indian industrial complex, TRDO complex, or they are getting a lot of advertisement from indirectly, like Tata is giving it, Tata is involved with industrial military. So that kind of jingoism, you will continue hearing that. The worst situation is the human rights violation, and the unfortunate international community has a lesser time to pay attention on them. They think that whatever the BJP government is doing or whatever, they are more interested, and this is proving that the international politics, especially, we are again going into that situation where military interest, economic interest dominate over the values. So the era of the values, human rights, the way the Americans are behaving, looking towards the other side, the other European nations are looking towards the other side. What is happening, not only, okay, Kashmir is an India-Pakistan problem, they say that we have generated and Kashmiris are, it's not India, whatever they say, agreed, it's a dispute. What is happening daily? What is happening in other states?
All over India.
What is happening all over India?
Manipur, Jharkhand. You start from the east, go all the way west.
Why international community is not paying attention?
They will soon realize, sir, because I don't know what exactly is brewing in the mind
And
of
here,
the Indian
one
leadership.
point, what is happening? This is a criminal act of the international. They are keeping us in the grey list, giving recently again, saying, oh, you are improving but more, do more. But what is happening where all the violations and these things are happening?
There's a story. I mean,
Nothing.
there-
And where the
there-
India
there-
and
there
where
are
the
so
Americans
many
have been lobbying
stories.
and the Europeans are doing. These are
There are
the
so many
realities we have to
stories,
come
sir.
out
I
of
mean,
it.
you know, they are because
All that has come out in
look at
public,
the size of the Indian economy and look at the size of the grey area of that economy. So that's unbelievable. Anyway, Professor Saab, was a pleasure having you, Ambassador Saab. Thank you so much. Jal Saab, pleasure to have you as well, sir. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.